Hey there everyone, this is Oslin with a Mythic Plus video guide for the City of Threads dungeon in Azj'Kahet. Before we get started, remember to hit that like and subscribe button to stay in the loop on future content. Let's get started. Coming into the dungeon, here are the notable trash pulls you need to be aware of moving up to the first boss. Interrupts on the Sareki Silk Binder should be prioritized on Silk Binding. This starts off as a 20% movement speed reduction, but can fully immobilize the target for 4 seconds if it's not interrupted. They also have a Web Bolt that slows the target by 70% for 3 seconds. Royal Swarm Guards have 2 abilities. The first is called Ravenous Swarm. This will pulse party-wide damage over 6 seconds. They also have a frontal cone called Earth Shatter. You'll need to dodge that as well. The Herald of Ansarek casts Doubt. This will inflict the entire party with a debuff that makes them doubt the main tank's capability. Wait a sec. This will inflict shadow damage to the target every second for 8 seconds and will explode in AoE damage and stuns players it hits for 3 seconds. They also have an ability called Twist Thoughts. This will deal damage to any player within a 4-yard radius. The first boss of the City of Threads is Orator Krix'vizk, who will immediately pull all players into melee range. If any player attempts to leave this circle, they will be hit with Chains of Oppression. This will inflict significant shadow damage and pull them back into melee range. The boss will repeatedly spam Subjugate and Terrorize. Subjugate will be the tank buster that also reduces movement speed by 30% for 10 seconds. He'll also spam Terrorize, facing a party member and casting a frontal cone. You'll need to move out of this. The boss also casts Shadows of Doubt. Similar to before, the target will take moderate damage every second for 6 seconds, and then explode for significant damage, hitting any player within range. His main ability will be Vociferous Indoctrination. This will pulse AoE damage to the party for 4 seconds and then spawn a dark pool once it expires and grows quite large in size. This will be entirely reliant on you tanks to pull the boss out of the dark pool, since other players won't be able to extend their range without triggering the boss's Chains of Oppression. Once you've defeated the first boss, cross the bridge to face Mythic. This isn't a difficult pull, you just need to be mindful of the Perfume Toss, which will disorient players, and the Gossamer Barrage that will root them in place. The game will start by showing you the minion that you need to be mindful of by spawning an Eye of the Queen, and then directing you on where to find the ones that remain. Their main abilities will be Null Slam, which is a teleport behind a random target, followed by a frontal cone. The second is Void Rush, which is a barrage of physical attacks against several targets in your party. This is a healer intensive that lasts for 5 seconds. You'll need to find 3 more once the Eye of the Queen has been defeated. These are spies that will be randomly placed in 3 quadrants of the city. Assuming you're starting from the bridge facing into the city, you'll have 1 mob placed in the district to your right, another mob placed at the far end veering off to the left, and the third will be placed in the district immediately to your left. To find an Eye of the Queen, you'll see a path of shadow silhouettes trailing towards the Eye of the Queen, which will then highlight the NPC once you've closed in on it. Additionally, you will also need to dodge the sentries that roam the city, as these will immediately eject you back to the bridge if you step inside their circle. Once you've defeated all of the Eyes of the Queen, Executor Nizrik will ask you to come find him. Nizrik will always be in the same location, regardless of where the Eyes of the Queen are placed. Once you speak to him, he will take you towards the second boss. The second boss encounter is a 2-phase fight where both Nyx and Vix share the same health pool. In Phase 1, Nyx is the primary aggressor, using abilities like Shade Slash, which is a frontal cone attack that deals heavy damage. Each time this ability is used, it leaves behind an echoing shade, which will also cast Shade Slash in the direction it's facing on Nyx's next use of ability. Another significant ability from Nyx is Duskbringer. It's a 1.5 second cast that pulses shadow damage to players caught within its radius. If you're inside the 15-yard circle when the cast finishes, you'll take heavy shadow damage. At the same time, Vix will also cast Ice Sickles, marking players with arrows above their heads and firing several frost projectiles in their direction. These projectiles deal additional frost damage over 12 seconds via debuff, so healers need to be prepared to mitigate the damage. Rime Dagger will be the transition into Phase 2. This is a tank buster that deals significant frost damage and applies 10 stacks of freezing blood to the tank. Nyx will take on a supporting role using Shadow Shumpo, which deals heavy physical damage followed by a debuff that applies additional shadow damage. The Freezing Blood debuff causes the tank to take increasing frost damage every second. To remove this debuff, other players must help the tank soak the blue circle to reduce these stacks. However, this comes at the cost of everyone in the circle taking damage, so healers must stay on top of group healing during these moments. If the tank reaches 16 stacks of Freezing Blood, they'll become frozen solid, taking heavy frost damage and being stunned for 30 seconds. Duskbringer can also overlap. For tanks, this means you want to move out of the Duskbringer circle since the group won't come to your rescue if it means taking damage from that as well. At 100 energy, both Nyx and Vix will initiate Synergic Step, during which they'll dash across the arena multiple times, inflicting severe physical damage to any players in their path. This ability swaps their roles. Notable trash pulls to the third boss, we have the Sureki Conscripts. This will cast Brutal Jab, inflicting moderate physical damage that will increase on subsequent hits, followed by a debuff that increases the target's physical damage taken by 10%. Web Marauders cast Rigorous Jab, increasing the damage of the next Rigorous Jab by 10% for 30 seconds. Covert Webmancers cast both Grimweave Blast and Mending Web. Grimweave Blast will bounce heavy nature damage up to 3 targets, whereas Mending Web will heal a nearby ally for 10% of their maximum health every second for 10 seconds. This needs to be interrupted. The Royal Venom Shell casts Venomous Spray. This deals AoE damage to all players every second for 12 seconds and cannot be interrupted. Just be sure to dodge the swirlies on the ground. Much like the Royal Swarm Guards, the Royal Venom Shells also have a frontal Earthshatter cone that deals significant nature damage and knocks the player back. You'll want to move out of this. Inside the Transformatory, the unstable test subjects cast Dark Barrage. This places a bunch of swirlies on the ground within a 4-yard radius of the targeted player. They also have a 20-yard AoE channel called Fierce Stomping that triggers every 1.5 seconds for moderate physical damage. Skittering assistance will also charge. Lastly, before reaching the third boss, we also have the Sureki Unnaturaler. These cast Void Wave, which is a 50-yard AoE ability, inflicting progressive shadow damage every 1 second, knocking players back. This stacks. The Coaglamation encounter has some mechanics that are similar to the Raging Tempest fight from the Nuku defensive dungeon in Dragonflight, but this boss moves around rather than remaining stationary in the center of the room. One of the key mechanics is Oozing Smash, which is the main tank buster. Tanks need to mitigate this ability as much as possible, but healers should also be on high alert. Oozing Smash deals significant shadow damage to the tank and applies a debuff that reduces all healing received by 30% for 10 seconds. This fight is a DPS check due to the room slowly filling with small black blood pools. These pools, combined with the boss's Blood Surge ability, will reduce the available space over time. Blood Surge drops a pool beneath the boss, and if DPS takes too long, the tank will eventually run out of safe ground. Anyone caught in the pools will suffer heavy shadow damage every second and experience a 35% movement speed reduction. The main mechanic players need to be aware of is Viscous Darkness. This ability spawns black blood orbs that move towards the Coaglamation, and if they reach the boss, it will heal for 7% of its health. Players must intercept these orbs before they reach the boss. Since the orbs can spawn from any direction, it's best to avoid positioning the boss in a way that makes intercepting them difficult. When a player intercepts an orb, they will be debuffed with Corrupted Coating, which inflicts a healing absorption effect. Healers need to be ready to address this debuff quickly. At 100 energy, the Coaglamation casts Dark Pulse, which deals heavy AoE damage to all players every second. Healers also need to be prepared to manage the high incoming damage during this phase. You'll need to fight 2 mobs prior to the final boss. The Elder Shadeweaver casts a Shadow Shield that absorbs a significant amount of incoming damage, and prevents silencing and interrupting effects. Umbral Weave will deal heavy damage while rooting players in place for 12 seconds, while Web Bolts will also slow movement speed by 70%. The Hulking Warshell has a delayed spawn, but note that the tank may need to fight both of them simultaneously. The Hulking Warshell will cast Tremor Slam. This will deal significant damage for players caught in the blast, and heavy AoE damage to players caught outside of it. It will also spawn a number of Hungry Scarabs which need to be tanked and focused down by the DPS. Ravenous Swarm will be the second ability, which pulses moderate AoE damage to all players for 6 seconds. The final boss of this dungeon is Ezo, the Grand Splicer. There's nothing insanely difficult about this encounter, you just need to be very aware of your surroundings. Ezo will summon 3 shifting anomalies. These will start out stationary and deal significant shadow damage to any player that comes into contact with them. These anomalies will also shift to new locations periodically, identified by blue swirlies on the ground. These will move in a straight line, so when you see them, don't stand between the anomaly and the swirly. Much like the 2 encounters you faced before the boss pole, Ezo will temporarily transform into either a Nerubian Lord or a Nerubian Sage. As a Nerubian Sage, Ezo will cast Umbral Weave to ensnare all players, inflicting significant shadow damage and rooting them in place for 12 seconds, or until the webs are destroyed. As a Nerubian Lord, Ezo will cast Tremor Slam, pounding the ground and dealing significant nature damage to players caught in the blast, and heavy nature damage to players caught outside of it. This will also summon Ravenous Scarabs that will cast Gorge. After 5 successful casts of Gorge, the Ravenous Scarab will cast Gut Burst. This will kill the Scarab instantly, but deals moderate nature damage to all players and stunning everyone within 5 yards of the explosion for 4 seconds. The tank buster here will be Process of Elimination. With this, they will be targeted by a blue circle, and Ezo will send all 3 anomalies hurling towards them, one at a time. This is unavoidable, but tanks will want to mitigate and move out of the group to avoid damaging other players, and the healer will want to be ready to top them off. Lastly, healers should also be ready for a 6-second intensive during Splice. This cast cannot be interrupted and will pulse party-wide damage to the group.